Hey Bat fans, Luke here, back with another video, and today we're going to take a look at another Bat story that not too many people talk about, this one being called Batman Deathblow After the Fire, which was written by the Seminole team that brought us the great story, The Joker, that is Brian Azzarello, Lee Bermejo, along with Tim Bradstreet. Now, Batman Deathblow was a 3-issue miniseries that was. I'm gonna try to see the look at the actual the release date. So I can't remember off the top of my head. 2002, which was a crossover story between obviously Batman, along with the character Deathblow. Now, Deathblow is kind of more prominent today because if you look at the titles that are being released, there is a Deathblow influence in the current DC lineup. If you're reading we'll call it the series, Wildstorm, just headed by Warren Ellis, there has been a spin-off of the series that's just, I think it's going on issue 2, which is entitled Michael Cray. And Michael Cray is in this book. And more along to that Deathblow the character. As we see in this story, Deathblow is not just one singular character, but it's a bunch of characters using the Deathblow name. Now, if you look at Michael Cray that's being released in the Wildstorm pages now versus the Michael Cray that's in this book, I think Michael Cray, along with Deathblow, also can be kind of interchangeable, meaning that there can also be more than one Michael Cray, along with one more Deathblow. So I'm not really too much an expert on the Deathblow series or really Wildstorm. The extent of my really Wildstorm knowledge before Wildstorm was just recently released not too long ago was the short mini-series Nightmare on Elm Street. That's really the extent of my Wildstorm experience, but neither here nor there. So as you see, Deathblow really originating out of the Wildstorm universe, coming together with the character Batman. Which, if you look at it, Batman, Deathblow really are oil and water, two divergent and totally opposite characters. Batman being the detective, Deathblow being a mercenary. Batman really holding on to the virtue of not killing and still being able to attain your objective, where Deathblow, he's a mercenary. He will kill to get his objective done. And obviously too, Batman being a vigilante, Deathblow quasi being a state actor, so I don't want to necessarily call him a vigilante. Or really, maybe a mercenary may be hard to kind of categorize him, at least in this story. But he's definitely at least government endorsed, because he is brought in by the quote-unquote organization IO, International Operations Organization. But that's it. You can kind of say the same thing with Batman and GC2PD. But anyway, if you look at it, for the most part, really are two totally separate characters. But that said, is it worth the buy? This one is the deluxe edition. This one was $22.99. Paperback probably going to cost you about $16 for 3 issues, so that's kind of tough. But basically, is it worth it? And I will be straight up front with you. This is one that it packs a lot in 3 issues. And the details matter in this one. But it's definitely one that you might have to read more than once to really kind of piece things together, or at least kind of get like the big overview of what the story was trying to really get after. Once you kind of see the kind of puzzles, kind of the pieces of the puzzle kind of get laid down. And I will be upfront and say this is really a Azzarello type story. If you remembered, or if you read anything by Azzarello, whether it be Broken City that we had in Batman, or most recently had in Moonshine, or or in Joker, they all kind of have that kind of noirish street level type theme to their storytelling, and this story is no different. This really is a ground level detective type story, even though it is really almost laid out on the global stage. And I'll get to that in a minute. But if you kind of like those type of stories, this one will really, kind of tickle your fancy. Art in this, Lee Bermejo, it is really great art, and we'll kind of skim through some pages here in a couple minutes. But that said, this one, the art in this is, if you're a fan of Lee Bermejo, your opinion is not really going to change. If you don't like Lee Bermejo, your opinion is not going to change. If you're on the fence on whether or not to like him in his art style, especially in Batman, I don't think your opinion is going to change either. This is really just, classic Lee Bermejo, for the good and the bad, and I'll kind of get into that in a minute. Now the coloring, I'll kind of touch on the coloring here in a minute, but what we have here is that you do see a lot of going back and forth in time in this story. And what I mean by that, a lot of the bulk, it's kind of redundant, but the preponderance of this story kind of comes up in obviously present day, as well as a time period about 10 years ago, and it deals primarily with a character which I can never really pronounce his original name, but we'll say the Falcon as his kind of code name of the big guy that Deathblow and his partner, I think his name is Richard, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's kind of like a spotter, this Richard guy, and I swear if it's not Richard, I'm going to be really ticked off, because I know Richard's actually a friend of Bruce Wayne, and I'll kind of just flip through it. But so anyway, yeah, so Richard is kind of spotting for Deathblow after he's going for this character named Scott, not Richard, Scott. That's Scott. There's Deathblow. Put my finger right there. Going after this character named Falcon, and it turns out to be a botched mission. They're actually not really Falcon, but really going after a hostage. But when Deathblow goes in, obviously the hostage is found dead, so it's a failed mission, and they have to abort. And it kind of goes back to present day, because it all deals with this associate of the Falcon he basically can start fires with his mind. And also, as this goes on, you see a subplot of a severed hand inside a toll booth with a card that later is described as, that kind of like a death card, kind of like a signature killing, whatnot. And Batman kind of gets pulled into this, because later, as we see Scott, as he's talking to Batman, kind of making his pitch with this other female who's actually a part of the CIA, is actually killed while in dinner, and it's like literally, it's mentioned that he literally died with a fire starting in his lap, and burned like 95% of his body, and he's basically not going to make it. But as Batman, or Bruce at that point, is trying to say, hey, what led to you being killed, and he mentions the name Deathblow. So now this story now morphs into Batman kind of track down, or kind of get beat on the character Deathblow, which then morphs up the whole divergence of the story, being the IO with its ties also with Deathblow and Scott, as well as this Firestarter or Firefly. It's not Firefly as we know him, but they kind of tongue-in-cheek call him Firefly. But this Firefly, as well as this character named Falcon. I keep saying Falcon. And that really kind of morphs into kind of the motives of what this Firestarter is trying to get after. And obviously his tie to the Falcon, and the overarching kind of global power struggle that's going on. That's kind of referenced as kind of like the low C plot of this story. That really doesn't really go too far in depth, but it's one that you kind of see why it's kind of put into the story. And if you haven't read this, I don't want to go too far in depth because really the plots and what's revealed really does make this story really worth the read. And this is one, I'll be straight up with you, I do recommend it, but again, this is one you have to almost kind of to read at least twice, where you get through, see what they're saying, then kind of all the Easter eggs and the hints that's kind of laid out through the book. But then go back to the beginning. Once you got all the knowledge, you kind of see the connections a little bit better. Because if there is a fault in this book, I'll kind of get into that. It's sort of the storytelling. But again, I don't want to go too much in depth in this because if you haven't read it, again, this is one I recommend, and I don't want to ruin it because really the story is one that this is one you enjoy, not only because of the story also, but the ride that goes along with it, and where you kind of go, okay, I get what they're saying, I get it, and once you kind of piece everything together. But before now we talked a little bit. So let's go to the art. Lee Bermejo's art in this is really nice. If you haven't read, obviously, The Joker, definitely check out that art. If you've seen the awesome Christmas story called Batman Noel, he did the art in that, and it's fantastic. It really is a good example of Lee Bermejo's art. Again, this is one, if you're a fan, you're going to like it. If you're not a fan, you're not going to like it. It's kind of not really going to change your mind too much, but it's just typical Bermejo art, and I do like the designs he has for people, minus one, which I'll get into in a minute, but it's really, I don't want to say realistic art. I mean, there's the dead hand with the death card, which is kind of like Deathblow's signature. It just really does have a sort of realistic type of feel to it. And it really does fit kind of like that noirish type of feel that matches perfectly with Azzarello's storytelling. His Batman design, minus 1 point I'll get to in a minute, is really well done. Which we see Batman talking to Commissioner Gordon here. Which Commissioner Gordon, while it's a brief cameo, character was spot on. And yeah, the Bruce Wayne design, I'm to be honest, not really a fan of his Bruce Wayne design, but one thing I also did like is really how Bermejo does the city. And he does it where it's not crisp and really polished, but it does kind of have that dark-esque kind of feel to it, where the design for the city is good, but the details with it are kind of murky-ish. And with a place like Gotham, that I think that's really is a perfect fit for it. One thing I will say about this book, though, you see Deathblow in there, some action, with the art, is that this is a really dark, muted color palette. It's, whether with the exception of very few reds, it's primarily your brown, your gray, your black, and little hints of, kind of like, I don't want to say white, but yeah. But even the white's kind of murkish. It's really a dark colored book. And again, it really goes well with the story other than the paneling. But I mean, this is typically what you're going to see in the book. And I'm just kind of skimming through all the pages. That's the color palette of this book. And again, I think it's a very good match for the story. It's telling it's ground level, noirish, dark, and it does fit it really well. So let's go to the thing. Of all the things I kind of, it's perfect, I just landed right on it. The one thing I really critique Bermejo's Batman for is the eyes. If you're like me, the one where I kind of prefer my Batman to kind of have like the lenses. This is going to seem austere to you, but I like this one panel here. I really like a lot of these panels that you see now lately. I mean, this is old, but you see Batman perched up on the city, and you kind of get a good sky view of kind of like a city below him as he's kind of brooding on a gorgo or whatever. I really do like that, and that page was done really well. That's when actual crowd of people were attacked by the firefly dude, whatever, I don't know. You see some really good bat gadgetry in this. But if I had really critique the art in this, again, just that Batman with the eyes, I mean, again, really, you don't see too much of this. I think I can count on one hand how many times you'll see kind of like bright colors like this in this book. A lot of it is this. It's just that kind of color palette. But the overall art, it is really nice to look at. Paneled great. Again, minus the exception of kind of like maybe the Bruce design. And I love that Batman right there. Almost looks kind of like that cover in Hush. We have Batman and jumping down. It'd be kind of more like this. That jaw coverage is great. I really can't really criticize the artist because for the most part, again, minus the small little details like I mentioned, it really is nice to look at. Which leads me to the story. Again, this is one that, I mean, it's a lot is packed in the 3 pages. And Azzarello does, for the most part, a good job of weaving all the plot threads together that really makes a strong, cohesive story. That said, far from perfect. I do like how we have the IO, the International Operations, how we have a little quarrel with the CIA, and how the Falcon character is kind of put on the global stage. But I will be upfront, if you're kind of one that kind of wants to keep politics out of your book, this one might be kind of flirting along the lines with it. It does kind of imply some complicitness with the government as far as domestic terrorism and meddling in international affairs and whatnot. So if this is one of those kind of topics kind of make you cringe, you might not like it. But for me, kind of keep my personal comments out of that. It was probably not the best page to be stuck on. I didn't find it too overt, but I can kind of see some people just like, ugh. But I will say, I do like how everything's kind of weaved together in that, and then you kind of see some backstabbing and some clandestine operations going on even between the IO and the CIA. And how this Firefly character, Firestarter or whatever. Man, what's his name? I know there's Max. I think it's Max. They call him Firefly, Firestarter, whatever. But I think his name is Max. But Mazzarello, while I'm looking, Mazzarello does do a very good job of weaving all those plots together. That said, if I had to really kind of critique it, the one thing I really didn't, I thought was kind of lazy a little bit, is how in the beginning we have the revelation of the severed hand and how that was kind of morphed together with the whole story, bringing everything between, I'm just going to call him Max at this point. It's Batman in the cave, and actually has a picture of him as he's kind of digging through information. It has his name clear as day. But as I'm looking for him to continue on, how that is all brought together, while it was a good idea, the way it would just kind of execute, it did seem a little lazy, just to be honest, because while they kind of go back to the severed hand as far as who the person's hand it was, toward the very big end of the story, and just how it all kind of set the dominoes in motion was, to me, I thought, Maxwell, there it is, god darn it, Maxwell is a Firefly Firestarter guy. It really did seem kind of cheap, and it really, I thought Azzarello kind of overplayed the significance of the tie between that and how the case kind of went about. While I do like how Azzarello kind of weaves the thread in this story, I will say the details in this were kind of choppy, and again, does require you to maybe kind of reread it. I mean, when I read a story, I don't need it to be spoon-fed to me. I do like to be challenged a little bit, but this one, it was a little bit where I had to really pay attention and then kind of go through it and then go back and go, okay, I get it now. It kind of makes sense. And for some, that's the ideal reading. To me, I just think it was kind of too choppy and really didn't have a really good flow to it. While it did have a good flow to the story, the details might have not been laid out smoothly, if that really makes any sense. What else? I do the twists in this are good. Again, the story is good, and if I really had to just kind of sum up the writing, kind of not really belabor this anymore, is that the writing did feel kind of choppy. Everything from how the details were laid out, even kind of like the characters flip-flopping of intentions and motives, whatever. It felt just a little choppy. Great concept, and overall executed well, but to some people, including me, I mean, the details matter, and how the details are laid out is almost kind of important as the overall execution of the story and how all things run or it comes out at the end. But to me, it just felt kind of choppy. That said, one more, Deathblow. I don't think I need to really, well, if you're reading it, you'll see me in present day. I will say the way that, no, I can't, I don't want to ruin it. I'll just shut up, because I did have just look at Deathblow in the beginning and how he's kind of using it. Get toward the end and you'll see it, and kind of step back. You might kind of see why maybe someone might be like, yeah, that Deathblow character, I kind of maybe saw that fake out coming toward the end from a mile away, but I don't know. But maybe my cheapest complaint with the writing is that really the Deathblow character could have really been anybody. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if it was just deployed really to prop up the Wildstorm universe way back in 2002. I'm not sure, but to me, it's really, it could have been, Deathblow really could have been anybody. I mean, not really, I mean, I'm not going to say it was bad or unenjoyable, it just, that plot line really could almost been any cop, any assassin, any mercenary, anybody. It almost could have been. It wasn't really, his promises in the book might have been a little bit overplayed, if that makes any sense. So, but man, it really does sound like I'm kind of painting a negative, kind of picture on the story, and I'm not. This is a good story. I recommend you get it. I give it a 3 out of 5. And that might even sound harsh. I mean, it's above average, but this is a good read. I mean, the story is good. It's a great concept. You get a good mix, again, primarily at the street level, but you do get some, global themes kind of put into it. Art's great. Very dark, muted palette that matches the story. Everything, all the signs say great story. It just, some of those little details kind of bring it down a little bit. And again, this is one, I don't think you're going to get everything once you're reading once. This is one you have to read probably at least twice to get everything. And, yeah. Oh, maybe one thing. Whatever. Yeah, what the heck. They kind of left that severed hand thing kind of float, even though in reality that's kind of resolved at the end of the story. But man, the GCPD and Batman just kind of gave up on that thread about a third of the way into the book. But neither here nor there. Overall, again, Batman Deathblow, give it 3 out of 5. Definite give my recommendation to pick it up. Again, maybe not one right off the bat, but this is one, yeah, definitely pick it up. It's an elseworlds story. It's one, really, it's worth it. Pick it up, but just, again, those kind of points I've kind of laid out. Just kind of keep them in your mind as you go through it. So, anyway, yeah, that's it for this video. Hit me up in the comments below what you thought of the story. If you read it, can kind of bat chat about it and kind of go from there. Also, I'm already thinking toward Christmas. I have a Christmas themed video series that I'm thinking about doing in my head. Probably not original. People have done maybe something similar, but I haven't done it. It's obviously going to be a series, so there's going to be a lot of them. So the challenge is going to be, obviously, the books I want to talk about, the length of each video and how I'm going to do it. So, but it's something I definitely want to do. I'm excited and getting ready to, I know we haven't even passed Thanksgiving yet, but Christmas is right on the horizon, and I'm all about, if I can, get the holiday themed videos out there. In front of the Christmas tree, whatnot. I'm excited. It's my favorite time of year, and first time I'm gonna try to do some Christmas themed stories, and hopefully it works out. Just gotta get the time and the concept and the plan, and just roll with it. Anyway, don't know what I'm gonna do for next video. I kind of like going again, like these old Batman stories that not too many people talk about. I like doing videos about them. I will say, well, I might not do a video about them. Detective Comics I thought was really strong this week. Batman Lost, if you're a Grant Morrison fan, pick it up. I enjoyed it. Mr. Miracle continues to be just a kick-ass series. Red Hood and the Outlaws. Red Hood. Just never would have thought Lobdell would be able to hit a home run on that character like he is now compared to where he was doing not too long ago. Because, it was rough then, but really steadfast. Still got Suicide Squad and Harley Quinn to read, and my indies, Redland and Harrow County, and I think I got one more. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, I am rambling, but next video, again, I might kind of keep to this whole Batman story, not to make people talk about it, because that's kind of fun. Anyway, rambling. Until next video, take care.